April 2026. The world was on a knife's edge. I mean, we were seconds away from a conflict in the Middle East just exploding into a global catastrophe. So what happened? This is the story of the 11th hour deal that pulled us all back from the brink. It's called the Islamabad Accord.
Okay, let's just get right to the stakes here. This wasn't some empty threat or just, diplomatic talk. No, this was a direct warning from the White House. Civilizational destruction. The world was handed a deadline, and the consequences, they were crystal clear. And honestly, terrifying. That single phrase, it kicked off one of the most intense showdowns we've seen in a long, long time.
So everything, and I mean everything, came down to this one moment in time. A single deadline that was literally carrying the weight of the entire world.
The speed of this crisis was just incredible. It all started on March 25th with this really tough 15-point proposal from the U.S. to Tehran. But then, just over a week later, on April 5th, Pakistan jumps in and completely changes the game. The clock is just ticking down, right? Every move is being measured in days, then hours, all leading up to that 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline. And you won't believe it, but the truce, it was accepted with just minutes to spare. Minutes!
So what was this deal that managed to stop the clock? How did it come together? Let's break down the agreement that somehow emerged out of all that chaos.
Okay, at its heart, the Accord is basically a giant pause button. The number one goal, the most urgent thing, was to get a 2-week ceasefire in place. Why? To reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical energy artery. But the really clever part is its two-phase structure. The idea was, hey, let's solve the immediate crisis first, and then push all the deeper, much more complicated stuff to a second round of talks later on.
But when you actually look at the details, you realize just how fragile this whole thing is. I mean, the two sides are worlds apart. The US and Israel, they want a short 14-day pause. Iran, they're talking about an indefinite stop to all fighting. The West wants the Strait of Hormuz opened immediately, no conditions. Iran says, sure, but you'll have to pay a transit fee. These aren't small things, They're massive fundamental disagreements that were basically just papered over to hit that deadline. They weren't solved.
So, you have to be asking, right? How on earth did a deal with these huge gaps even come together? Well, the answer isn't in Washington, and it's not in Tehran. It's in Islamabad. It all came down to a really unique strategy from Pakistan. The whole thing was built on this idea of facilitative neutrality, and Pakistan was in this incredibly unique position. Think about it. They don't have diplomatic ties with Israel, but they have deep, established trust with both the US and Iran. That made them the perfect, indispensable, and impartial bridge builder when literally no one else could fill that role.
And they put that neutrality into action with this brilliant 3-pillar strategy. Okay, pillar 1, the military channel. Get the army chiefs on the phone with each other right now to ensure battlefield silence. Just stop the shooting. Pillar 2, the diplomatic pivot. They completely reframed the deal. This wasn't about a political win for anyone. It was a global economic necessity. They pulled in China, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia to build that consensus. And finally, pillar 3, the venue. They positioned Islamabad itself as the neutral ground for all future talks, basically cementing their role as the arbiter.
And did this strategy work? Oh yeah. It had an immediate, measurable impact on the entire world. And you could see the biggest win from the ceasefire in the global economy.
Just look at this one number. It tells you everything. In the hours leading up to the deal, oil prices were just going through the roof. The second that truce was announced, Brent crude prices dropped 12%. Instantly. That's not just a statistic. That was the entire world breathing a collective sigh of relief. It's a direct measure of just how close we all came to total economic chaos.
But here's the catch. A key piece of that economic solution is also a huge point of friction. The deal lets Iran charge these transit fees for ships passing through the strait. Now, for Iran, this is a reconstruction fund they desperately need. But for the West, they see it as a geopolitical toll, a dangerous new precedent.
And all of this brings us to a pretty uncomfortable reality. Yeah, there was economic relief, and yeah, the fighting paused. But this whole peace accord? It's built on incredibly shaky ground.
And maybe the most alarming part of all is this little detail, buried deep in the text of the agreement. There's a massive discrepancy. See, the English version of the deal demands the total dismantling of Iran's enrichment program. But the Farsi version, it talks about recognizing Iran's right to enrich. I mean, that means the core issue that started this whole crisis, it's still completely unresolved.
And the cracks are already starting to show.
everywhere. I'm talking within hours of the deal being signed, an Iranian oil refinery was hit. Missile alerts were triggered in the UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait. And maybe the biggest red flag, Israel has publicly said the ceasefire doesn't apply to Lebanon. Analysts are calling it the 1,000-mile disconnect. So the truce might be holding in one spot, but the conflict is clearly still happening on other fronts.
Look, the Islamabad Accord absolutely pulled the world back from the edge of a cliff. There's no doubt about that. But it was a last-minute fix, right? It's built on top of unresolved conflicts, contradictory language, and some really fragile promises. And that leaves us with the one big question we all have to ask. Are we looking at the start of a real, permanent peace? Or is this just a tactical pause in a much, much larger war?